It's Wednesday, October 16th, and this is To My Liberal Friends. We spend a lot of time right now focusing on the presidential race. Will it be Donald Trump for the second time? Will it be Kamala Harris moving from the Naval Observatory to the White House? We'll know in 3 weeks, and the only prediction I'm going to make at this time is it will be close. But I want to spend some time discussing some other elections that are just as important to the voting public. And I'm talking about the U.S. Senate. Right now, the Democrats have a one-seat majority, and even that's been tenuous because Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia and Kyrsten Sinema from Arizona have not submitted to the majority leader, Chuck Schumer. When the Democrats wanted to eliminate Rule 22 in the Senate, that's the filibuster rule, both of them said no, and the rule remained in place. If what I expect to happen next month in Senate races, most Democrats should be thanking those two retiring senators from saving themselves from their own foolish desires. Now, I bring up these races because the Senate is a unique body in our government. Originally, senators were appointed by state legislatures because they were intended to represent states. That changed following the ratification of the 17th Amendment in 1913, which called for the direct election of senators by the voters. Now, I'm not convinced this was a wise decision because prior to that, senators did not serve long careers. They came to Washington, served 6 to 12 years, and went home. With that being said, we should be looking at what can happen in Senate races around the country. First is the race that's almost a given. In West Virginia, Joe Manchin is retiring, and just about everyone has conceded that Jim Justice will win the seat and add one to the Republican total. And that would bring the Senate back to a 50-50 status, and the winner of the presidential race would then send the vice president to break ties. Now we have to look at what other Senate races look like and which way they would be projected to fall. Montana's first up on the list. For 18 years, Jon Tester has used the "I'm a rancher like a lot of you" talk to win a seat in a state that is decidedly red. The problem is that once elected, he comes back to Washington and supports the liberal agenda of the Democrats. The voters of Montana may be finally tired of that shtick and send him home for good, back to his ranch. Tim Sheehy was a top Republican recruit, and in a New York Times Siena poll last week, Sheehy was up 8 points. He's held that margin since August. Tester has finally got religion about the border, but it may be too late for him to save himself. This would be a big pickup for the Republicans and probably give them the majority. Ohio is a Senate race that has gotten close. Once again, you have a state that will support Trump and is the home to J.D. Vance, but Sherrod Brown has hung on to a seat by talking moderately during election years. Bernie Moreno, who lost to Vance, is running again, and the race has gotten close enough for Republican groups to spend upwards of $80 million in September and October. Brown will also get strong financial support, as this is a seat that Democrats have to hold and could be a bellwether seat for other races. The latest poll showed the two of them tied, and that's not good news for any incumbent. Up in Wisconsin, another Democrat, Tammy Baldwin, was in what Democrats thought was a safe seat. But Eric Hovind is gaining on her, and Baldwin's lead has evaporated to the point that the Cook Political Report finally shifted the race from lean Democrat to toss-up. That means the Democrats have to spend money in a race that takes money out of other races. Staying in the Midwest, we moved in Michigan, another state that is part of the Democratic blue wall. Former Representative Mike Rogers has been widely touted as a top GOP recruit this cycle, especially for an open seat that's being vacated by Senator Debbie Stabenow. The Wolverine state is also among the preeminent swing states on the map, giving Republicans a clear opening against Congresswoman Elissa Slotkin. Last week alone, Rogers and the GOP outside group spent $7 million compared to $5.3 million for Democrats, amid private concerns from Slotkin that Harris standing in the state's not strong enough. Rogers is still trailing by a few points, but Trump has tied the race in Michigan, and should he win there, he would probably pull Rogers with him. My birthplace state of Pennsylvania is going to be a dogfight. The Keystone State has emerged as a preeminent swing state on the 2024 presidential map, but whether that will ring true in the Senate race is a major question as Republican David McCormick attempts to deny Senator Bob Casey a fourth term. Much like the Wisconsin and Michigan races, Republicans have been encouraged in recent weeks that McCormick, buoyed by heavy spending by his camp and the McConnell allies, is narrowing what has been a consistent Casey lead. In the past week, GOP forces spent $9 million on the race, which has garnered the second highest ad spending and reservation totals of any Senate contest behind only Ohio. Casey's still favored, but how Trump does in the state could be the deciding factor. I would have to mention Maryland as well. It's a heavily Democratic state, but with the retirement of Senator Ben Cardin, it's an open seat. Former Republican Governor Larry Hogan has mounted a strong challenge to Angela Alsobrooks. Also, Brooks has been dogged by scandals that she claimed tax deductions she was not entitled to claim for homes, and also failed to pay her HOA dues for several years. If Hogan were to win, it would indicate a landslide for Republican candidates around the country. There's some other races out there that we're looking at, but Arizona looks to stay in the Democratic column, and Jackie Rosen seems to be fending off her challenger in Nevada. But the importance of the Senate is critical, because no matter who the president is, they have to send their nominees to be confirmed. And if Republicans control the Senate, then you're going to see Trump send his judges, or if Harris wins, they're going to have to be much more moderate. This has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening. And if you enjoy the podcast, hit the subscribe button.